Welcome to Ripple Effect Connection. I'm your host, Kristi Hujik. You all know that it means a lot to me to talk about the nervous system and the downstream effects of stress on the body, both physically and mentally. I've brought it up many times on this podcast, and many guests have spoken about this very topic. Today, I am speaking directly to the women who need to hear this conversation the most. If you're a type A, high-achieving woman who's constantly overstressed, struggling to slow down, and having a hard time finding quiet in your life, this episode is for you. I recently reconnected with my friend Ramona Crabtree-Falkner, and she is the perfect person to guide us through this. Ramona's a transformational empowerment health coach, holistic wellness facilitator, and a mindfulness expert. She has spent over 20 years helping professional women break free from overwhelm, self-doubt, and burnout, guiding them back to their authenticity, purpose, and joy. Through her Empowered Authenticity program, corporate mindfulness offerings, and transformational retreats, Ramona creates space for women to shift their energy, cultivate self-trust, and build a more aligned and fulfilling life. So if you're ready to step out of survival mode and into a place of ease, this episode will give you the tools to do just that, including how to take that all-important first step. Ramona, your very first appearance on the podcast. I love it. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, I'm so grateful to be here. Was grateful to reconnect and just kind of see where we are in life and share a little bit about what's going on.
Yeah, I always say it's a great excuse for me, to have this podcast, to be able to reconnect with folks. And that is the best part. That really is. It's the coolest part. And I always feel like everyone's doing such interesting and great things that it never all comes out in one appearance. So everyone's already automatically welcomed an extra time to come back. So of course, you're always welcome back. But today we're going to dive into as much as we possibly can. But the very first question I ask every single guest, because I believe it is the foundation of what we all do, and that is our why. So can you tell everyone, what is your why for what you do and why you do it?
So my why is I wanted to always be of service to help others. As long as I can think back to being a professional in the field of holistic wellness, I always just wanted to help others. And most recently, that has been kind of laser pointed in a very specific direction, especially because of the experiences I've had working with professional women that are burnt out and overwhelmed and overgiving and living under a perfectionist mindset that is causing them suffering. And so I really wanted to find a way to support that demographic that was finding their way to me naturally, right? So when you have something that's naturally finding its way to you, in my opinion, that's usually a sign that you have a purpose in that. So As I started to really look over the field of clients and what they were coming in for, was all the same. It was primarily professional women that were in their maybe mid 40s or 50s and kind of hitting a wall and needing to find other ways to navigate what was going on for them. So that's my why. I want to support that community, and I know that I've been able to. So I thought it's time to be more intentional around that.
Yeah, and I think, from my standpoint too, especially with the amount of autoimmune people that I'm seeing, they fit into that same category. And that's the type A, the perfectionist mindset, right? So it's these driven, a lot of times women, not that there's no men, but a lot of times women just driven to do so much to succeed. And, maybe sometimes this is the first thing that comes even before the illness, but it can obviously manifest into symptoms. But I think you and I talked about something when we sat down, that the very first step of all of this is really, really important, and that is awareness. So can you talk about that and how I would say it in my end of things and you would say it in your end of things, how that kind of needs to be the very first thing that happens when someone's listening to this, is to honestly understand and be aware that it's even happening to you in the first place?
Yeah, I think that by the time a woman finds herself to me, they haven't quite captured that what they're experiencing is awareness, but that is exactly what it is. Like all of a sudden they're like, something isn't working. I don't know what to do about it. They feel stuck. They feel overwhelmed. They feel stressed out all the time. They feel like a lack of inspiration or passion in their life. And they just know that something isn't working and they can't quite put their finger on exactly what it is, but they show up and sit across either the room or the camera from me, and they're dropping down all of these same concerns that they don't know what to do. And to me, that is the first step, is knowing that you don't know what to do and you need help. So awareness in the work that I do is about actively becoming aware instead of it being a passive awareness, which is, like I said, ultimately what has driven someone to my door or to my website. Is all of a sudden there's just this lackluster, there's something's missing, can't figure out what to do. And little do they know that's that higher self cultivating a highlighted point of awareness that something needs attention. So for me, in the work that I do, that's the first step, is actually cultivating intentional awareness. And intentional awareness is taking a look at yourself from a scope of kindness and compassion, and recognizing what it is that has happened that got you where you are. Now, I'm not a counselor, I'm a coach. So the difference between that for me is that I want that microscope, or that visual, that reflection, to be done for self-understanding. And once you have at least an understanding of what's not aligned, what's not working, what's causing you distress, then you can actually take action and do something about it. So that awareness piece is the most important key that you could have to unlock your transformation, your self-exploration, your development, your growth. You just have to be willing to do the hard work, which is cultivating that awareness, learning how to step outside of whatever it is that's going on and look at it from a different perspective.
So when you're talking to the people listening, right, and what does this look like for them? So can you give them, because again, there's going to be some people that be like, oh, this doesn't really apply to me. Like, give them a sense of what this looks like and how you're kind of parsing out exactly what this does look like. Because you're asking them questions, right? You're helping them really come up with the solution, which is what we do too on our end of things, right? I always tell people, I don't have the answers, you do.
Yeah.
But I'm just trying to help you get to them by asking these questions. So what are some of the ways you parse this out and what it looks like and how it's manifesting in their lives?
Yeah. So, primarily what I've done is I've created a program that allows the individual to do some self-work with themselves. And then when they come into me, oftentimes what happens is they come in and they've listed out everything that didn't happen first. And that's our perfectionist mentality. That's our I have to do everything right mentality. It's whatever programming we have within us that tells us this is what looks like success. Right. So a lot of what I'm doing is listening and then asking them questions that then help them tap into the truth for themselves. So whether the questions are, here's this program, I want you to go in and listen to this meditation and then take these journaling prompts and see what comes up. Well, even when they do that, we still want to tease out more. Right. So their time with me, when they're actually with me, is me seeing it. So I think that's one of the gifts that I have claimed for myself in my own journey, is that I have this innate ability to see the potential for every person that I'm in time with, right? I can see all of the possibility. And most often they're struggling to see that. Mm-hmm. They're struggling to see their potential. They're struggling to see the possibilities, because all they can see is the roadblocks or the things that have them stuck in it. So a lot of my work is, yes, giving them tools and teaching them how to utilize said tools. But ultimately, my goal is to support them in being able to live using those tools. So there's time at home that they do work independent, But then the time that they're spending with me, I'm kind of showing them how that tool can apply by asking them the questions that I would ask myself in that situation, because they're mirroring some part of me and I'm mirroring some part of them. And I think that that's the beauty of this self-exploration work, is that you attract like. And because of that, we can see each other in one another. And when you can feel seen, when you can really be seen, vulnerability is allowed.
Yeah, for sure. And so many people, they don't have that component where they are seen, whether it's by themselves or by people around them, where they don't, they really don't, they don't get that,
Yeah. Yeah. And so I feel like my container is intentionally created for that person to feel safe, safe to be seen, safe to see themselves, and to know that they're in a safe, sacred space for opportunity for growth.
Yeah. And I think also, too, when we talk about the latter stages of this, because there are obviously stages that people can be in, okay? And we get to the burnout stage, which means you've been doing this a long time. And so we get to this burnout phase, like from our standpoint in health, it can affect everything, right? Adrenals start prioritizing other things besides, what they're supposed to do with when it comes to cortisol or hormones and things like that. So from a physical standpoint, we can obviously manifest into symptoms. But when you see someone going towards that burnout phase or in that burnout phase, what does that look like when they get in front of you? What does that look like?
Well, as I said before, it attracts like, right? So I can speak from my own experience with that. Burnout looked like hustle. Burnout looked like pressure. Burnout looked like overeating, undercare for self. Burnout looked like stress and a lack of desire to do anything. I mean, there were days that just getting out of bed was effort. And I see that in others. And so, once someone's hit that point, there's going to be a lot of intentional effort that has to be put in to shift that. You started out with the why, and it didn't occur to me till right now that that's part of the why. Is because I was there and I did it and I experienced it, and it was messy. And I had to really dig in to the work that I teach in order to bring myself up, to raise back up, to shed the things that need to be shed. And most oftentimes, that's the biggest part of burnout, is you have to be willing to let go.
For
So
sure.
yeah, by the time you're burnt out, it's you're pretty deep in it. You're pretty deep in all of the things, and ultimately living is just a task.
So how does mindfulness and energy healing kind of help in combating stress and burnout? Because again, I think it's the trying to give the people a vision who may not really understand the role. They hear energy healing, things like that. They're not really exactly sure what we're talking about. So how does the mindfulness and that energy healing, go toward helping that? Like, what does that look like?
So, when we are hitting these intense levels of stress and burnout, we're so far away from quiet. The mind is super, super busy. It's constantly on. Maybe we're not sleeping at night. Maybe we're consumed by the projects that are not as important as we've decided that they are, right? What mindfulness and energy work do, and I bring energy work into even the coaching program. Like, so much of the Empowered Authenticity program is about you understanding energy and understanding how your energy is speaking to you and where you need to give attention to it, right? So if we can understand, let's just talk about going to the beach. So the beach is my safe haven. It's my sacred, nurturing space. Nature in general is that for me, but 100%, you put me on a beach and I'm sitting in a chair and I am staring at those waves that are coming crashing into the beach and then returning. There is a rhythm. There is a rhythm that happens when you're in nature that brings your frequency into alignment. So you are buzzing at the same frequency. So let's talk about the difference between the frequency of being at the beach and the frequency of being in downtown somewhere.
Yeah. Big difference.
So I'll share this story because I think it's relevant. Several years ago, I felt inspired to go to New York City and participate in the summer solstice event where it was yoga in the middle of Times Square. And this was for me this culmination of two very primary aspects of me as a human being. I was a theater major, so being in the middle of Times Square was right in the middle of this one part of my life. And then doing yoga was this other part of my life. And it was this conversion of these two loves that I had throughout my whole life. And the point of doing yoga in Times Square was about letting yourself find peace in chaos.
Yeah.
It was great. I loved it. I loved the experience. And then I got on a flight to come home, and that trip ignited a year-long panic attack. Yeah. And maybe it was already there and I didn't have the awareness of it prior to that experience, but I'd never been in a large city like that. I'd never traveled from Queens into the city every day for the 3 days that I was there. I never stayed in an apartment in Queens in a neighborhood that I didn't know, in an environment that was very, very foreign to me. And then I come home and I'm anxious all the time. I'm on edge all the time. I don't think I slept one night I was there because I was in this very foreign experience. And that is a frequency.
Yeah, it could be EMF sensitive too. And the EMFs that are in a city, that can contribute to that too.
Yeah. So having been a Florida native, like I didn't grow up in a big city like that. Downtown Orlando is a city, but it is certainly not like New York City. So there's two very different energy signatures between the beach and New York City. And my body could not handle, at that point in time in my life, the energy signature of that city. And so I had to do a lot of work. I had to meditate more. I had to get some help on some physical things that were happening. I had to get real with why it is I was having anxiety. And it wasn't just that energy frequency, it just amplified it. So mindfulness and meditation and energy work are important to shifting out of burnout because it brings you into a frequency that is more naturally ours. So when I started shifting out of massage therapy and fully into Reiki and craniosacral therapy and yoga therapy and really focusing on helping my clients move out of fight or flight into rest and digest, unless I was coaching, there was no talking when someone was on the table.
Yeah.
Because the energy frequency that was happening while I was giving the energy work would be skewed if the person was sharing with me all of their woes and everything that was going on, when really what I was inviting them into was a space where they could let all of that go for 60 minutes. And so shifting my practice to when you're on the table, we don't say anything, and if we need to chat, we chat beforehand, was a significant shift in my own well-being. Because I wasn't consuming, and this was where my burnout happened. I wasn't consuming all of the energy of the woes of the person that was on my table that was spending an hour giving that energy to me. And I was just sucking it into my body, touching them.
Yeah. Yep. Like people have to understand we are energetic beings. Everything is energy. So,
yes.
And I don't think the dots always connect, but I think I know when you and I were going back and forth on questions and then we were talking about what are some of the first steps people can do to break free from overwhelm and self-doubt. I'm always like, get yourself out in nature.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Get yourself out in nature.
Get quiet. Yeah.
And what about the people that are uncomfortable with the quiet? What do they do?
Yeah, there's ways to navigate that as well. Sound healing, which is an energy healing technique, which is not silent. That is a great tool. Chanting, which is something that I teach in my programs, is how to use mantra. So frequencies that are utilized in yoga to chant help to energetically align you, move things, moving your body. So if you're not a restorative yogi and you need to move, then do a flow, but choose a slow flow. You don't have to go to the power. You don't have to push. You can go to something that is more fluid and allows you to connect to your body and your breath a little slower. So slowing down is, as much as it's uncomfortable, it's necessary, and slowing down can look different for each person. What I like about nature is you can do mindful walking, you can do mindful meditation, you can sit with a tree and become one with the tree, like really absorb the energies that tree is emitting from you or to you. So meditation isn't, I hear this all the time. Meditation isn't about shutting your mind off. It's about learning to witness what it's saying without attachment to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's about stepping back from it and allowing it to pass through, and listening for the smaller voice that might have an answer for you that's not right there in front of you. In my program, I don't do any meditation that is currently silent, and that's really more of a long-term goal. In the beginning, I'm just trying to get you to slow yourself down a little bit, and so all of my meditations are guided, so you're not in silence per se, but you are slowing yourself down, quieting yourself, and taking reflection and observation of where you're being guided.
And I mean, we're talking to, the other thing is that, you'll hear those people who are trying to get to slow down. Those are the busiest people on the planet, at least, they think they are. And I don't mean that flippantly, like they're not really busy, but I think we also create some of this, right? I always like to use the Eisenhower matrix with clients, which is always like, do you really have to do that right now? Do you really have to do it? Like truly have to do it right now? What can you put off? What can you delegate to someone else, and what don't you need to be doing at all? Like, what if you took that time you were scrolling on social media and you added to it, instead of doing that, you replaced it with 5 minutes of breath work or journaling or whatever. So let's talk to the busy woman, professional mom who in that daily routine is trying to find time. How would you suggest, and what would you suggest carving out time for? Like what could some of that look like that they can incorporate simply?
Yeah, I always suggest 5 to 10 minutes to start. It doesn't have to feel. I think that was one of the biggest misnomers for me as a yoga teacher, and my journey with yoga is I had this concept of, so even in yoga, here I am, right? I'm like doing the thing, and I'm still operating in this mentality of it has to be all or nothing. So there was a point in time in my journey with yoga that I had to really evaluate what did it mean to me? And when I stepped back, I started to realize that yoga wasn't about and it's not about the posture. It is about the presence with it. So if you can give yourself 5 minutes of presence with yourself, however that looks, maybe it's 5 minutes of sitting on your back porch with a cup of coffee. Maybe it's doing a water meditation in your shower. Whatever it is that you're saying, for this 5 minutes, nothing else matters except for me. And so in my programming, I usually start with breathing, because a lot of what I see in my work is we're not getting enough oxygen into the body, right? So if we look at the lungs, if we look at babies, let's just go to babies. If we look at babies, their bellies expand and contract when they're breathing. And as adults, we're not breathing down there. We're breathing up in this 25 percentile, which is up in right underneath the clavicle bones and in the upper chest, when really we need to be dropping down into that 75%, which is opening those lobes and letting them expand and bringing more oxygen in, because we have old used breath sitting at the base of those lungs that's not being touched because we're breathing too shallow. Learning to breathe deeply is probably the very first thing that I teach anyone, as far as yoga or even in meditation. Like, the first meditation that's in my program that you experience is breathing, because when you have more oxygen in all of your organs, but especially in your brain, you're able to see things more clearly, period.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's such a great tool because it's simple in that you can use it at any point in time. Using it throughout the day when you're at work in a stressful situation, like you can't really take deep cleansing belly breaths and be stressed at the same time. So like, it's a nice tool to have to rely on, like, at any point in time. I think some of the mistakes, and see if you would agree with this, some of the mistakes I will see people make is that they think that this is just a nighttime thing before they go to bed. And the thing about it is, it's like, if I always kind of use the analogy, if you try to stop your car and slam on the brakes from 100 miles an hour, that's going to be a lot harder than if you're going 25. So what if we could have these 3 anchor points during the day where you're kind of checking in with yourself and you're kind of doing these things throughout the day? Is that something that you teach, talk about, and maybe feel helpful for people to try to kind of get their bearings even during the day? And this is not just a nighttime routine?
Well, and again, I think that it's practice, right?
Yeah.
So practice is what makes something accessible. We talk about this on the mat, like what you're practicing on the mat, how is it carrying on in your life, right? So that's why yoga is called a practice and not
Hmm.
something else. It's because every day you show up, you're going to be a little different and you're going to have a different experience and you're going to awaken something different and you're going to feel different and you're going to have an aha that's different every time. And so breath work, meditation, quiet time, mindfulness is a practice. And
Yep.
without practicing it, you can't access it when you need it. So
Exactly.
it's like telling Michael Phelps, you don't need to go practice your laps there. You just hop in the pool and win that gold medal. That ain't gonna happen,
Right.
right?
Right.
So how does it happen? Because he showed up and he did the work every single day. It's the same thing.
Hmm.
It's just with something that we do from the moment we are born.
Yeah.
Is breathe, is allow ourselves to be with it. So my suggestions are, and it varies person to person because I don't know your life. I don't know what you're willing to do. What I can say is that you have to be willing. You have to be willing to dedicate yourself to whatever practices you're choosing to help you become more intentional, become more mindful, become more purposeful. Because transformation doesn't happen by osmosis, it happens through practice. And so if you're willing to put on your calendar, okay, I'm going to wake up every morning before I even get out of bed, I'm going to press play on a 5-minute meditation for breathing. And then at lunch, I'm going to sit down outside and I'm going to press play again for that 5 minutes of meditation. And then at night, I'm going to press play again.
Yep.
And actually at night, I would suggest you do something like a body a body awareness
Body scan
where you're kind
or
of
something.
allowing your body to be observed, and you're softening and you're relaxing the body and you're sinking into the moment more and more and more, because then it's going to help you get to sleep. But it's a choice.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we kind of try to talk about it too. Like you make it like a hygiene practice,
Mm-hmm.
you brush your teeth every day. But yeah, it's the thing that you want it to be familiar, because in times of need, in the most dire times of need, you don't want something to be unfamiliar because that creates more stress. So you have to have a familiarity with it and a trust that this is something I can rely on, right? This is something that I can lean on in this situation.
Yeah, I remember when I started incorporating this practice of breathing more, and my husband, I would take a deep breath and sigh it out. What's wrong? I'm like, nothing. There's tension building up in my body. I can feel it. I gotta let it out. So I'm taking a breath so I can do
Yep.
that and I can get some clarity. And now, like, it's just second nature. If I'm feeling tension, I breathe. I remember sitting with my niece and my son, and they would be upset, and we would be like, just take a deep breath in, just inhale and exhale, and then we would talk through whatever it is that was causing the tension. And I don't remember being taught to do that as a child.
Yeah.
So I would imagine that there's other adults that were not taught to do that as children, as I was not. And that is not to say that that's everyone. But the reality is I know from my own experience, I didn't know how to navigate that tension. And then it became a year-long panic attack. So,
Yeah.
retraining your brain is ultimately what I'm guiding anyone towards. And this is what my approach with mindfulness and mindset and meditation is about. It's understanding what makes you tick, why you're there, and what can you do to help yourself shift out.
Yeah. Yep. No, that's a great way to simplify it. And then when you're doing this, right, you have explained the different ways you have to do this. So you've got a program, but also to the retreats. I really love that idea, because I've just seen so many people go on these retreats and they're life-changing, because then you kind of don't have a choice. Like, this is all you're going to really think about. We're taking away the external noise. So I want to talk about, just as we get toward the end, talk about the things you do have available for people to whatever feels right for them to do this kind of work.
Yeah, so I have several different avenues. So one is my Empowered Authenticity program, and this program is designed to be experienced over 4 months, just to teach you the foundation that you're integrating these tools into your life. again, a lot of times we pick up a book and we read it and we're like, that's great, I really want to do that, but we don't know how to apply it. So that was the inspiration behind building programs that help take the concepts and the ideas and the tools that I've collected over my entire adult life and teach them to others so they can actually apply them in a way that feels accessible. And then there's the transformational women's retreats, and I call them transformational because that's all I've ever seen. Like when they leave, they have been in this safe container to really get vulnerable with themselves, to be seen by other women that also are being vulnerable, to reconnect with nature. I really believe in being in places that are reminding us of that frequency we want to be living in. And utilizing all the tools that I have in my pocket to help them have ahas, have moments of joy that maybe they haven't seen in a long time, to remember what it was like to dream and have an idea, and feel empowered to do something about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and it's great because it's very hard to eliminate the external noise in the world that we live in. And I have seen and heard the stories of some of the most amazing transformations coming from these kinds of retreats. So I really firmly believe in those. And then like shifting gears too, you're talking about the corporate world. And how that can benefit an organization. So even talk about that and how you can work with teams in that.
Yeah. So, being able to come into an environment where stress is high, it just is, because we are operating on deadlines and expectations and performances and things of that nature. Sometimes we get lost in the noise of the projects and forget that we maybe chose the path or the job because we had passion for something in it. So even in my own experience, what I can say is that when I get stuck in a project and I'm too heady, then I'm not coming up with as much inspiration. So bringing in mindfulness workshops or bringing in regular meditation experiences where I come in and I can offer meditation once a week with your team so that they have a guaranteed moment every week they can pause and have somebody else guide them. The workshops would give them tools to be able to apply and approach their projects with maybe a little more mindfulness or more inspiration, and find more flow in it. When we get so in our heads, we lose sight of why we're doing something we're doing.
It's great because it really does translate to every area of life. How someone parents, how someone's working, right? How you look at your health overall, like it's all in there. It's all part of it. It's just like in functional medicine, we just talk about how everything is connected. And this is exactly what we're talking about. You can't have one and not the other. And if you spend as many hours as you do at work and that's that kind of environment, well, that's hard to really undo that when you're not there. And that's why we're saying like it is important to do this throughout the day. So I'm going to ask you, because I know we're targeting a very specific segment of the population with what we're talking about today, because it is so prominent with these women that are overachievers, type A, perfectionist, everything. So I want you to speak to those women right now as we get to the last couple of questions. What's one piece of advice you wish every woman could hear?
You have the answers. You have all of the answers within you. You just have to give yourself the space to get quiet so you can hear them. You don't have to remain stuck. You absolutely can move forward. You just have to give yourself space.
Yeah, the space and the time to do it, wanting to do it. And then I think the biggest question that they're going to want to know is how can they connect with you, get involved? So how can folks go deeper and learn more about what you're involved with?
Yeah, great. You can go to my website, Authentic Life Journey. You can sign up for a free exploratory call where we're going to get on and talk about whatever it is that you are needing or wanting to tap into, whether that's to work into a program or to join me on a retreat. We have a retreat coming up in September in Montana called Roots of the Wild Soul. And I chose that on purpose because I want every person that's coming to remember that they have that wildness within them still, and they can play and enjoy life and find the things that are going to light them up. So yeah, like get on a call. Let's just have a chat and see what it is that you need and how I can help you. And I love, this is my joy in life with my work, is the moment that, and I'm almost going to cry right now, is when a woman comes in to a session and they have had an aha. And I live for those moments because that's when I can see that they have really fallen into a place of knowing themselves.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's beautiful, 100%. So I really hope and know that some people are going to hear this. They're going to connect with your message, whether they're watching this on YouTube or they're listening to it on all the platforms that it's on. Your message is also what I feel about a lot of people that I am connected with in this space, is that everything comes from the heart. It really does. And you can feel the heart in what you do. So thank you for sharing that with us. And I hope you'll come back, because I know we didn't get to everything, but I know that there's so many ways and directions we could go, but people need this. So, definitely hope you'll come back and share more with us.
Yeah, I would love to. And I just want to, before we close, say that I'm so grateful you brought up the heart, because that's actually that's my belief. Like, everything comes back to the heart. If you can get into your heart space, then you can fall in love with yourself, and you can nurture yourself, and you can listen to that smaller voice. Boy, the sky's the limit.
Awesome. Thank you, Ramona. We appreciate you.
If you enjoyed today's episode, feel free to connect with any of us on social media and let us know what resonated with you. Full show notes can be found at kristihujik.com/podcast. Please take a second to like, follow, review, and share this podcast with anyone who might benefit. And if you can leave a quick review on Apple Podcasts, it really helps me bring more amazing guests your way. Stay tuned for the next episode of Ripple Effect Connection. Let's create waves of change together.